Hey, so I'm going to take a look at the KVM pass-through setup that we have going on here. I have a little bit of problems. I just want to be able to demonstrate them. So I have a Windows 10 host over here. We're on Fedora Linux, and on the main system, we have a 1060. On the system with the pass-through, our Windows guest, we've given it a 2060. I also normally have this Blue Yeti microphone connected to it. I'm going to want to disable that, otherwise I'm going to lose audio whenever it goes over. So let me first go in here, and you can see here's the VM. I think everything is, what you'd expect. We do have firmware. I'll take a look at putting a dump on like pastebin or something of the whole XML configuration and all that type of stuff with libvirt. Because I do have like a BIOS passing and everything like that. I don't think it'll be relevant, but I just want to make sure everybody's got whatever information they might need to be able to give me any advice. So anyway, here's our USB controller, so I'm just going to pop that off. All right. Well, not USB controller, USB device. So that should be good now. So let me close out of this and hit play on the device. Okay, so it stole my keyboard and mouse, so I am using the EV devices, so I just hit both control keys, and their mouse is free. So that's going to start booting up. I don't really have any way to know when it gets up. I had dual monitors, and I'd kind of switch over to one of my other monitors here, its inputs, and I'd be able to see whenever the second desktop got loaded up. But as I'm trying to debug or diagnose whatever issue we have here, I'm trying not to have any complicated setups. So that should be coming online. So let's see here. Actually, so I've got a couple different builds of the client here, and I've got a couple of different builds of the host. So the host that is running on there right now is the latest build that's in the repo that's linked to off of GitHub. I also have the latest build of the client that I'm going to use here. So this is one that I actually built from Git, and just trying to look through my history because I've had a couple different options on it. There we go. So I'm running it with the -K. I can't remember what that does. I think that's the FPS. We'll see. We've got the computer to connect to, -S all, so I'm not using Spice as you would have seen. So let's just see what that does. Yeah, so that -K is the FPS at the top. So Windows Desktop is loaded fine. So this will allow us to start looking at what the actual problem is anyway. So I have a couple different things that I have problems with. One of them is highly reproducible, and that is the superposition benchmark. And I've talked to some other people, and they don't have this issue that I talked to on IRC, so it must be something about my setup. So before I launch that, just to show you what's here on the Windows side, so this looks all fine. Let's see here, like my computer, whatever it is on Windows 10. I just want to show you that I do have the hardware coming across. It is running the latest NVIDIA driver. Okay, so where's Device Manager? There it is. And there's our GeForce GTX 2060. Regarding the monitor configuration and everything like that, NVIDIA control panel slow to start up. These are on spinner drives. I have the OS on a NVMe one, but eventually, here we go. Yeah, so you can see I've only got one display up right now. It's 1920 by 1080. It's 144 hertz, and I'm trying to set things up to work at anyway. Nothing else weird in here. It's a brand new install as of a couple days ago. So anyway, if I launch Superposition, fires up just fine. Now, if I leave the test by the default, it's going to try to go full screen, and I think this is where we're going to have the problem. So I'm going to click Run here. So it said stream pause for a second. I don't know if you caught that or not. My mouse is still moving at this point. I'm just going to keep on going to these figure eights until eventually you'll see that the mouse no longer appears on the screen. Now, normally I would have a cue that was going to happen as well, because I would normally have the Yeti microphone, which also has my headphones plugged into it, connected. So I'd be able to hear the audio start on here. So the test itself actually does work, and the test would complete, but I can't see any of it. So hopefully you'll be able to see that same situation as well. That's interesting, because I have not lost my mouse at this point. I can't click on anything though. Up there went the mouse. Okay, right. So I was just a little impatient. So now I can't do anything the whole time it does that test, basically. But eventually it will get done, and it'll come up with some score, which is actually slightly higher than the score when I run it in a window. So I don't know if that's related or not. I'm going to go ahead and hit both the control keys to pop out the mouse. So while that's doing that, I can just show you some stuff on the host. So you can see the LookingGlass client when it started. Well, it'd be nice if it was a little bit bigger so we could see what the messages are. There we go. So I don't see anything that's a problem here. I can open another terminal up. This is to show you kind of the setup that we have here. And like I said, I'll probably put all this on Pastebin or something like that. But so there are all of our PCI devices down here. We can see, well, I should have a GP106, that's right. So that's my 1060, and there's 2 devices for that. And then I also have a 2060, and that's these 3 different devices that are here. So like I say, those are getting passed across. I believe there's a configuration that I have in like etc modprobe.d vfio.conf, and so we should be able to see all the PCI IDs that match up to that in there. So the OS doesn't actually see any of that, like if we look at a D message or if we look at the NVIDIA drivers and stuff. So anyway, all the basic stuff seems set up fine. There's also that, what is it, VIRSH, and I believe you can do, what is it, like a dump on Windows 10. Does it? Let's find out. Okay, apparently that's not the syntax, right? I can open up an editor, I'll get the dump and put it in there. So yeah, the config isn't anything super complicated, but it's not 100% basic either. I tried to follow like the Arch Linux wiki, even though I am on Fedora here. So as we go down, what's different? We do have huge pages on. That's definitely different. The CPU, I tried a couple different things here, but basically I'm on a 6600, so 4 cores, no hyper-threading, boo, I have a new one coming. So anyway, 3 of the CPUs I've assigned to the guest, and then I've taken the IO thread and the emulator itself and put it on a single CPU. So I don't know if that's ideal, but that's what I did. Also here we have then, what's this? Oh, this is the UEFI setup stuff that we added into here. I believe my QEMU conf I had to do a couple things in too, if I remember correctly. Anything else that's unique? There's just the drive itself. So I am using a LVM drive with raw access mode that it can access. The driver is installed on the Windows side. It has access to CD-ROM, and then these are just all the PCI things we're sliding across to it and everything like that. USBs, network. There's my mouse and keyboard. I believe I also have some QEMU set up for that as well. Mouse and keyboard work great from everything that I've seen. We are passing a ROM for the NVIDIA card. I went to some site that was recommended in all these places to download the ROM. It seems to be working fine. Here's our LookingGlass configuration for the memory space that it uses. And then you can see I've got all these crazy options down here. So yeah, these are some of the QEMU args that I'm passing through for the mouse and keyboard, for the huge pages memory, for the audio stuff, which I'm not actually even using that now. Like I said, I passed through the mic, so that's really not necessary. The audio performance is terrible, basically, if I don't pass through my mic. So I'd rather not, but that's what I'm left with. So yeah, you can see as well that under huge pages, I have libvirt, and so yeah, the memory thing seems to be working. My performance doesn't seem terrible for what I have or anything. So yeah, let me go back then. Hopefully we're done with this test by now. So I was actually a little bit lower than what I've seen usually, but maybe it's because I'm running the terminal and, you know, the capture software and all that. So anyway, the results completed. I can hit control and control. And yeah, I'm back in here. Everything works. So what's the deal? Why, whenever it went full screen, did it disappear? Do I not have support for full screen in any app? I do actually, sometimes. So I haven't tested a lot of apps with this. I can tell you that 3D Mark works 100% fine. I've run it like 5 or 6 times. Never had it disappear on me like that. Overwatch seems to also be weird. It's maybe 50% of the time. It worked last time I opened it, so if I had to bet money, I would say it's not going to work this time. So hopefully I catch it on video misbehaving. So I'm going to let it load up here so we know it's not something weird like that. But let me hit play. So it looks like the window was starting to open, like we can see a shade of a window there. And I'm not seeing anything. So what's happened? I don't know. I can't hear, so I don't know if Overwatch is loaded or not. But how it worked in the past was that I could hear the Overwatch noises once it got logged in and everything. As I moved my mouse, I could hear the mouse going over the buttons, so I just couldn't see the desktop. Now, back then, I had another monitor plugged in as well. So the Guest 2060 was basically hooked to my TV out here. And so I could switch to it. And I was able to actually right-click on Overwatch and attempt to close it. In one case, I think I did get back to my desktop by closing it. But usually, I think the solution was that I had to reboot the whole machine. So in this case here, I'm going to have to reboot the whole machine, most likely. So if we're lucky, it will pick up my attempt to send a shutdown request to it. Seems finicky about this at times, but let's see. So we'll reboot. So hopefully we'll see a spike, and then an arrow going down would tell us, which looks just like that, I think. Maybe not. Let's see. Okay, yeah, it is shutting down. So it'll come back up, and then maybe we'll give it one more try just to see. I'd like to be able to prove to everybody that this really is like totally random seeming. So while this is going on, I'm going to close out of this LookingGlass client too. So again, we just have to wait. I have some ideas on how to make that kind of notify me when it's up, but I haven't seen anybody else's ideas yet with that. So it's definitely booting. I don't think there's anything else to show on the Linux side. I might try to put, if I get this all working, a how-to together with Fedora, but I will say there's some problematic bits on it. Getting, for me anyway, with my motherboard, getting VFIO to work, I couldn't pass in like an entire group. I can't remember the exact term at the moment, but I had to pass in individual PCI IDs. And it seems to, work outside of this. I doubt it's related, to that part. But anyway, I had to get a special kernel and stuff, and so my system's probably made out of glass right now in regards to updates. So let me try to open back up our KVM display here. Okay, so we're back. All right, let me try Overwatch one more time. So switch the mouse input in here. As I know if I retry it, N amount of times it will happen. But it's very close to 50-50. So maybe we'll get lucky and see it work just fine this time. Or like maybe it's some artifact that really I have to start it and has to not start for it to play properly. Yeah, that is how it works. So when I don't see that half-shaded window start, I get the paused, and then it comes up in full screen. This is working just fine. Overwatch is in full screen. It'll come up, and everything will work great. I'm going to let it load up, and since I'm making this ridiculously long video, I'm going to just jump into the training session too, just so you can see the type of performance that I am getting off of it. So I do have the FPS bar kind of blocking the Overwatch FPS one, so let me break back out of here real quick. It's not going to affect what's running on the guest. I'm just going to close out of KVM and fire it right back up. Oops. But I did want to remove the minus K off of there. Okay. Go back in. So yeah, right now my graphics card is in an 8X slot when it should be in a 16X. So performance is probably not going to be at the pinnacle. I'm guessing anyway, that I have some CPU limitations going on here. So things aren't perfect. Overwatch seems to stabilize after a minute though. So it's at 120 now. It's going to go up to about 144 where I think I have it locked. At least it usually does. But maybe with the OBS and stuff, yeah, I'm probably pulling down the CPU. It's all right. It works okay anyway. It works better than Wine's been treating me, which is weird too, because Wine had better FPS, but this seems to feel smoother. Okay, so exit to desktop. So what other things can I share? Well, I did talk to somebody else on IRC, and they wanted to make sure that I had matching versions, and I did see some comments about matching versions. So right now, these are both the newest builds, but that's like kind of not as good as having an official version I could point you guys to probably. So I've started to get a collection of the different versions here. I've actually deleted one that didn't have the right name and everything, but currently the one that we're on is LookingGlass latest. I have used this with the A12 release. Everything seems to work just fine with the A12 release of the host. Whether I'm using the latest client, we'll talk about the client in a second. So with the latest client. So then, when it comes to this client here, so this one that we're using, I don't want to have any problems with the transparency here. This one that we're using is the latest one, but I do have installed in user local bin. That's the A12 one.
So I just wanted to show you something weird. I didn't revert to this A12 one until this guy asked me to lock the versions, which makes sense, so I did. But if I go into this one, I'm going to put the -K on there. What was the network address? -C, whatever that internal address is. The options have changed. I think a -S is the equivalent because I'm not using Spice here. A -S all doesn't work anymore. But so if I try to connect like this, see, it comes up in purple. It goes totally black. No FPS, no updates or whatever that is up there. And I come back down here. It does say host ready starting session, so that's different than if the host were down or something.
But for some reason, I cannot get the A12 client to display. Now, for the A12 client, I did also, when I was compiling it myself, have to roll back the version of SpiceLib that I have, or a Spice protocol. I guess they removed some errors thing, and it wouldn't build like that. But the new client doesn't care if it's on the old one or the new one for the build or the running. I'm still on the old version of that library right now, so I have no idea why A12 doesn't work. I have a feeling if there was an A13, it would work just fine. Unfortunately, that makes it more difficult for me to make it easy for somebody else to pin down what's going on. So I open up the other client. Everything works just fine. Weird. So I don't think there's anything else I can really show. Like I said, I'll put up on Pastebin or something a series of links to all this different data here. I'll try to post this in such a way that I have all the times written down for when you can actually see this, because I'm sure everybody doesn't want to sit. I'm sure no one probably wants to sit here and listen to all this. But now I at least have it all recorded and I can refer to the spots. So thanks to anybody that listened. Anybody with any suggestions, I'll try it out and we'll see what we get. Thanks.